Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. One of the major changes that we saw introduced with MW3 Warzone is essentially a whole overhaul to the perk system. Now, it is sort of an extension and a continuation of the Warzone 2 base perk system, where we now have 4 base perks that we can use overall, but we had several perks updated or changed. We also got the introduction of a bunch of new perks, and so today I wanted to give you guys a more in-depth and detailed version of the overall perk meta here in Warzone as it stands. Break down, slot by slot, perk 1, perk 2, perk 3, so on and so forth, and tell you guys which ones you want to look out for and which ones you probably want to avoid using. So as we get into the details, if you enjoy the video, if you find it helpful at all, do me a favor, drop a like on it. And if you are new to the channel, you already know every single day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, news, updates, gameplay breakdowns, meta breakdowns. It's all here, so feel free to hit that sub button and turn on those post notifications. But obviously, when you go into your overall class setup and customization, you're going to have your perk package, and there are some default perk packages, commander, deputy, so on and so forth. I wouldn't recommend using these because you're never going to get the most out of a full-on loadout if you're using perks that they've designed for a specific playstyle. Obviously, you've got your own wants, your own needs. You want to have certain things that cater to your playstyle. So you can go through and make your own custom perk package, and that's exactly what I've done. To start the year, I've been running a mix of double time, sleight of hand, tempered, and bird's eye, which I all find to be super useful, and I'll talk a bit more why as we get to them. But this gives me a nice mix for my preferred playstyle. Obviously, if you are exclusively a sniper main, or you're exclusively an SMG and rifle kind of person, you like to play it a bit more slow and sit back and take people out from afar, or you like to run and gun and push for heavy kills, your perk preferences are probably going to change. However, there are some specific things you want to look out for in every category. So starting here first with the perk 1 category, this is actually shared between perk 1 and perk 2. They all stem from the same pool of perks, and then perk slot 3 and 4 have their own specific ones as well. But initially, Mountaineer, this is one that's going to reduce fall damage, and that's it. So this is a very straightforward, very basic perk, and for the most part, it could be useful if you're someone who's not trying to actively parachute a lot, or you're just prone to fall damage. But for the most part, this is more of like a mid-tier perk because it's very specific as to what it's doing, and it's not giving you multiple benefits for certain trade-offs. It's just about fall damage, and if you're in a specific spot where you can take significant fall damage, you should have the option to parachute too. So that does kind of negate that to a certain extent. Next up is Mechanic, and I won't lie, this is one of those ones that I don't find to be that useful whatsoever unless you're going for like specific challenges in, let's say, Plunder. This gives you reduced vehicle repair time, faster fueling speed, and reduced fuel consumption when you're not flying cars or flying cars. It's been a long morning. Flying vehicles. So this one to me doesn't really give you any significant advantage in standard Battle Royale or Resurgence competitive gameplay. Like I said, unless you're going for like a specific car challenge or you're playing Plunder and using cars to drive around the map like crazy, there's no real reason to ever run this from a competitive standpoint. You can find so many other cars and jump to so many other places to navigate things that it just doesn't really serve a huge purpose. Shrapnel is decently useful for certain playstyles. Explosive damage delays enemy health regen, it slows enemy movement, and briefly disables tack sprints when enemies are hit on the legs. So it can be very useful in certain fights, obviously if you're doing a lot of explosive damage, so you're using certain guns that might have explosive damage tethered to them, or if you're constantly using your nades and maybe tethering this with restock that we'll get to here in a bit, that could be a good combination. I do think there are more valuable perks in this tier, so again, it's just kind of like a mid-tier perk. Scavenger I find to be relatively useless outside of the bonuses for armor and cash, but in Warzone 3 right now, or MW3 Warzone specifically, I feel like there's a ton of armor because you stow it in your backpack so easily, and there's also a ton of cash as well. So this to me, given with like just the ground loot situation, pretty useless right now. Battle Hardened, honestly one that does stand out a lot more. There is a lot of stun spam, a lot of gas grenade spam. It makes you immune to snapshots. So there's a lot of benefits from Battle Hardened here. Definitely one of the main standouts, alongside EOD as well. A lot of nade spam. Everyone's getting a frag or a Semtex or a thermal barrack. So these can be pretty clutch in keeping you alive in those situations. Battle Hardened and EOD to me are two from this category that stand out a ton. Strong arm I don't find to be all that useful. Yeah, it's cool, you can see how far you're throwing a nade, but it's not really a huge deal in most cases. We've got Spotter, which highlights enemy equipment. pretty niche one here, sort of like a mid-tier, lower mid-tier one, just because there is going to be enemy equipment, obviously, but the situations in which this is going to give you an advantage in those fights is definitely more rare than, you know, getting hit by a grenade or getting hit by a stun in general. So compared to other perks in this category, it's not one that shines in my opinion. Sleight of hand, pretty self-explanatory, faster reload. While it is very simple and only does one thing, it's clutch. If you're a LMG user, if you use the large extended mags, that reload slowdown is rough sometimes. Having that faster reload obviously is very beneficial. Double time, arguably the most valuable perk in perk 1, increases your attack sprint duration so you can attack sprint for longer, and it reduces the refresh time so you get more attack sprint more often. Obviously, with movement this year, attack sprint is clutch. That is a huge benefit to have. We also have a brand new one just behind the face cam here with Irradiated. Allows you to move faster and take less damage in the gas. Super niche. You have to be in the gas for this to be relevant whatsoever, so that to me does knock it down some. It's not a perk that's always going to be giving you benefits, so it is useful where it is used. It's just not used that frequently until like late game. This could be one that you could have a separate class set up for that second loadout potentially. Then lastly, focus gives you better flinch when aiming down sight. It's decent, but definitely not one that's going to stand out more than say double time, EOD, sleight of hand, so on and so forth. So perk 1/perk 2's got a lot of options here. There definitely are some standouts, but for the most part, it's a lot of mid-tier perks. We then focus on the perk 3 slot, which is technically like perk 2. I don't know how you want to differentiate them, but perk slot 3 here, you got a lot of decent options as well. For starters, Escapist is just increased movement if you're down, prone, or crouched. That's not really that useful in a lot of cases. The downed movement's cool, but that versus some of these other benefits is one that I don't think really stands out whatsoever. Quick fix, definitely a solid one. When you get that kill on a player, you get that knock and full finish, or if you start plating, you get that health regen. That's so clutch in this. Getting that regen off as fast as possible, because it is pretty slow by default, is huge. So that's one I'm going to cycle in and out of my loadouts all year long. Tracker is pretty niche because you have to be close range for it to be useful whatsoever, and that to me kind of deters myself from using it, just because if I'm not in close range fights, it doesn't even feel like I have a perk equipped, so that's not a huge deal for me. Survivor is nice for the faster revive speed. You know, reduce cash lost on death is all right, but again, like I said, there's so much cash on this map that regaining is not all that difficult. So this is one that is useful for some situations, but also not standing out more than, you know, quick fix already, or tempered here, which I find to be incredibly valuable. It's 2 armor plates instead of 3 to get to that max health. You only have to plate up 2 times. Obviously, that's a huge time saver, and it gives you more HP per plate essentially. So that is huge in helping you out health enemies in gunfights. Definitely a standout one. Resupply, pretty self-explanatory. Recharging your equipment over 50 seconds. That's a solid one. You get your stims back, you get your frags or your knives or whatever the case may be back. That's solid. You don't have to worry about always looting those, or in some cases trying to hunt down an ammo resupply box. So that's a pretty solid one there. We've got cold-blooded, undetectable by thermals, TAC cameras, recon drones. It doesn't trigger high alert or combat scout, and that's the standout for cold-blooded for me. So that's what bumps it up some. Outside of those last 2 benefits though, with high alert and combat scout, I don't find it to be all that useful this year so far. Stalker is nice. It gives you better strafe speed and ADS speed, but you can also get this so much out of your class setups by default, and especially on the MW3 guns, where you don't have to go all in on control because most of the weapons are pretty easy. You can get really good strafe and ADS speeds by default. So this is a perk that's more geared towards players who need extra control on their setups, and they have to focus on that. One that is all right, but definitely not always necessary by any means. We've got payout here just behind the face cam. This is giving you more contract cash, and UAV towers are discounted. This is like a plunder based perk exclusively, not really a great one there. And then also primes, better accuracy and a faster ADS time if you're jumping. Solid if you are constantly spamming jump shots, but that's a pretty niche gameplay mechanic for one perk to be taking up that whole slot. I feel like it's almost too limited because you're not going to be able to jump shot in every single fight. Again, that's sort of like a close to medium range based thing. You're not jump shotting, you know, over 90-meter fights, for instance. So that one's a bit more specific there. Hey everyone, it is of course the holiday season, and if you're looking for the perfect gift this year, look no further than Gamer Advantage. This is the gift that keeps on giving, not to be confused with the Jelly of the Month Club, although that's pretty solid as well. Gamer Advantage is where it's at. Of course, you guys see me wearing the frames in every single face cam video. They are without a doubt the most important part of my day-to-day setup, because I'm obviously looking at screens all day long, and if you are as well, whether it be gaming, working, doing school, whatever the case is, these are game changers. They're going to help you sleep better at night, reduce headaches and eye strain, and all month long, everything on the GA site is discounted by 25%, and code Immortal stacks on top of that for a 35% off discount for all of December. So quite literally the perfect time to pick up a pair, whether it be for yourself or some friends or some family for the holidays. If you're interested, the link will be down in the description below. Lastly, we get to Perk 4 / what really is Perk 3 slot, and this is by far the most competitive, also the most limited in options. Ghost right away, super strong. Keeping you off the radar. Obviously, you'd have to run a suppressor in unison like this, but it's hiding you from heartbeats, portable radars, the UAVs when you're moving. That's pretty self-explanatory. Ghost is always a top tier perk. Shrouded is sort of a middle ground for me. It gives you a smoke grenade when you go down, which is super helpful, but in comparison to everything else that's in this category, the value is lacking for me personally when you realize how strong some of these other perk slot 4 perks are. Faculty is delaying enemy explosives if you're sprinting only. It also warns you of nearby enemy equipment and reduces combat noise. There's not much footstep audio as is and combat noise as is. This one's a little bit underwhelming for me. Combat Scout, gonna be solid, especially if you have one person dedicated to running this in your squad. It's gonna get those automatic highlights when you're hitting players, just like back in Warzone 1. It's definitely gonna be a solid one. Bird's Eye is so dominant to me because it gives you more information on the minimap. It shows you enemy headings, so where they're gonna be looking. It also counters ghosts. So if a player is moving and ghosted, this will counter that if you have a UAV up. So that to me is so good. High alert, obviously great for getting that information. You'll know exactly when someone is looking at you, so that's super clutch. And then lastly, we've got Resolute. It gives you better movement speed if you are taking damage from gunfire, but you have to be getting shot for this perk to be useful. And if you're getting shot, you're already not in an ideal situation. So that to me is a little bit, again, underwhelming. It's useful in those spots, but compared to High Alert, Bird's Eye, Combat Scout, etc., it's not really bringing value that I'd use that over one of those other ones. So obviously that was a lot of information. So I decided I'd just, whip up this quick little graphic here to give you guys a general rundown of the standouts from every category, the perks you want to avoid, and the ones that are just mediocre and a little bit more niche. So if I go through and hide the face cam so you guys can see everything in full, obviously the good ones largely consisting of those Perk 4 slot perks there, a couple of the other ones in there too, like Battle Hardened and EOD, Sleight of Hand, and so forth. But these are the ones you really want to be using in sort of like a mix and match scenario between all of your perk layouts. Mid, you could use these if you really want to focus on their specific benefits, like, Irradiated or Tracker if you're always close range, whatever the case may be. You can get away with some decent setups, sort of combining these with some of the good ones. And then anything in bad here is either just too niche or not useful whatsoever here for general gameplay. Whether you are a high skill player or a low skill player, they're just not really doing all that much there. So nice little rundown here to specify things and ideally make that larger conversation a bit more clear to understand, and it's more a bit of a TLDR version of what we just went through. So that is going to wrap things up for this one. If you enjoyed the video or if you found it helpful, do me a favor, drop a like on it, and if you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications. That way you can always guarantee you're up to date with all things going on in COD. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you later. Peace out.